In this video, I'll be reviewing a Google Ads campaign for a local auto shop in Georgia. So to get started, we're going to go to the overview. And we're just going to go ahead and look at the overall data to make sure there's no data point that is completely out of the ordinary. And as we can see here, all of this looks pretty reasonable. Cost per click is pretty reasonable. Cost per conversion, this is low compared to a lot of industries, but for the auto repair industry, the average cost per conversion is actually around $15, so that's already a pretty low average, so that's not a huge problem. From here, we're going to go to the recommendations tab, and we're going to check anything that's auto applied. And it seems like they've auto applied the correct recommendations, so we're good there. Next, we're going to go to auction insights to see how they're doing against their competitors, and they have a relatively low budget of $15 a day across both their campaigns, so it's not surprising that they're below 10% impressions in their target market. Next, we're going to come down to the search terms, and we're going to look for search terms that have a low click-through rate or search terms that don't apply to the services that they offer. So one thing that you can see right here that's kind of odd is looking for a auto mechanic in the US, because this is a local auto repair shop. They obviously are going to operate in the US. They operate in Georgia. So it's people that are specifically looking out for auto mechanics in the US could possibly be spammers looking to reach out and market to these businesses, not actually purchase services from them. So that's something we'd want to keep our eye on. If we got feedback from them saying, hey, we're getting a ton of spam calls or stuff like that, these are the first ones that we would say, hey, this is probably the problem. And we'd want to basically put the negative keyword as USA or United States, because people who are looking for auto repair shops near them in Georgia typically aren't looking for just any shop in the entire United States. But if you scroll over here, you can see that they've got pretty high conversion rates. So there's a possibility, I'm not an auto repair expert, obviously, so there's a possibility that this is just how people are searching up for their services, but this is a little bit concerning, so you would want to reach out to the auto shop and confirm that they aren't receiving a bunch of spam calls from people in other countries looking to basically market services to them or scam them. So we're going to keep scrolling down. We want to probably look at, we can see that we're still getting like 16, we're getting 10 plus impressions on the first 10 rows. We're going to knock it up to 30 search terms that we're reviewing, and we're reviewing it for about 2.5 months. That's an appropriate amount of time. Don't want to do an excessive like over 3 months, because if you're actively managing a campaign, there's no point to do that. But this is the first time we are looking through this campaign in several months, so we want to make sure that we check all the old data as well. So, and you can see that we have it filtered by impressions to find search terms that people just aren't clicking on in the slightest. And so what we see here is we've got a grouping of 4 search terms that just aren't even getting clicked through. And if it's got more than 10 impressions and no clicks at all, that's typically a sign that we don't really want to be showing for these keywords. And so we can mark these as exact match, because we want these to be exact match negative keywords, because if you change them into phrase match, we might overlap with some things that are positive, because, well, for one example right here, cheapest emissions testing, that's something that the government does. That's not something that an auto repair shop wants to advertise. But this senior oil change, they might still want to market to seniors who want oil changes, but this specific version of the search term is not getting any results, so we don't want to show up for it anymore. We typically would click off something like this since it's got 15 impressions and 0 clicks, but it's such a small search in terms of like you can see that these have like 5+ words in them, whereas this only has a few words, and it's got one of the words that we're obviously advertising for, which is tires. So we want to stay away from that. This is something that we can mark off, and especially considering how small of a budget that they have, we want to try to mark off as many keywords with or search terms with 0 clicks, because say they have a much higher budget, 14 impressions is not enough to discount a search term altogether. But in this case, with how low their budget is, we want to filter down as finely as possible. Wheels, this kind of falls under the same one right here. This specific keyword, it can go either way. We're actually going to mark off both of these just because of how small their budget is. Only $15 a day. There's not a lot of room to waste. So we're going to go ahead and mark those two off. We're getting to some that at least have some clicks. This doesn't seem to be getting anywhere. This one doesn't seem to be getting anywhere either. And once we're getting close to 10 or below, not really worried. See, Walmart oil change, that's somebody looking for, frankly, I don't know that Walmart offers oil changes. Maybe they do. Anyways, we're clicking that off because this is not a Walmart. And as we go down, we need to be looking for keywords that may not apply to them. Emissions near me, once again, nothing that applies to them. Emissions near me again. That makes it seem like this vehicle, you can see that this keyword keeps showing up for emissions over and over again. So one of these negative keywords, once we add these as negative keywords, we're going to delete the thing entirely and then just put in emissions. So that way, as a broad match negative keyword, so that way it never shows up for it again. We need to make sure we spelled that right. There was only one M. And we will go ahead and save those negative keywords. Keywords cannot contain more than 10 words. That's awesome. Okay. We can delete the and available. I don't know why people are... Actually, that makes sense, I guess. We'll just get it down to the main meat of that search. Now that we've added those negative search terms, we're going to keep going, and we're going to go look to see if we have a ad schedule. It seems like we have an ad schedule, but I believe if we look at the campaign, it's showing for all times. Yeah, as you can see here, if we zoom out, it's going to show that we are showing for all times, which is not the way we want to do it. We want to filter out like super early in the morning or super late at night. For the most part, for most companies, that typically works. So if we come here, we'll probably see that certain hours just aren't getting good performance. Typically don't want to do it by click-through rate. That's not as important. Number of conversions can be something if they're getting enough conversions. But sometimes a lot of those conversions can just be straight shit. Because like 12 a.m. to 1 a.m., most of our conversions are asking for directions or calls. So anything really outside of their business hours really isn't going to be helpful, because if somebody's calling outside their business hours, no one's picking up. And this could be a way to avoid the spammers, instead of marking off a keyword that is doing well, because we don't know if spammers are clicking on that or if people who are actually interested in their services are clicking on it. What we can actually do is, let's go to their Google My Business page. So Tillymill Auto Center, and let's see when they're open. So we can see that they're open from 7 to 6, and that's just a Monday through Friday. that doesn't necessarily mean we don't want to show up on Saturday and Sunday, just because some people can still be shopping around for the place they want to take their car. But for the most part, we're not getting a ton of people. Our conversions are focused on either people getting locations to our business, which is a sign that they're trying to get there soon, or people calling in. And the people calling in is definitely something we want to avoid happening outside of business hours. So one thing that we can do is it may affect the cost per conversion. It's a possibility that the cost per conversion goes up, but the quality of the conversions will also go up because we're avoiding people who just aren't interested at the moment, or they're, like we said, spammers, or they're calling and expecting somebody to answer the phone at 10 p.m. when no one's answering the phones. And unfortunately, sometimes the data just doesn't reflect that that's a bad time for them to call. Obviously, like this 3 a.m. one reflects that, but this 2 to 3 p.m., this is like prime business hours. They're also not getting conversions. So that's something to keep an eye out for. But especially when you have such a small budget to work with, it's okay to make changes that go against the data when you have a very good reason to do so. So in this good reason would be most of our conversions, if not all of them. We can go to our conversions. You can see calls. We have 3 submitted lead forms. This is over a 3-month period. And then you can see over 100 calls, nearly 100 get directions. These are not considered conversions for this campaign, so we ignore that number. But local actions, website visit, also not for our campaign. As you can see, these are the account defaults, which is directions and clicks to call. So that just further backs up that we just really want to be spending our money during business hours. And another way you can do that, if you still want to advertise outside of your business hours because you still want people getting information, but you don't want them calling as much, what you can do is you can actually come in, and you've probably seen me do this in other of our Google Ads audits, but what you can go here is you can go to their call asset, and you can actually schedule their call asset so it only shows up during business hours. So as you can see here, this is not good. We want it to show up only Mondays to Fridays from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. because this is when people can actually pick up the phone. Anybody clicking outside of this is just leaving a voicemail, and that's not likely to convert. Not to say it won't ever convert, but they have a very small budget, which we're not worried about spending through their budget. We're worried about spending it effectively. So that's why we would be making that change. So now that we've made that, we're going to actually come down to the audience, or not audience, sorry. We're going to come down to ad schedule. And we're going to put in a ad schedule that makes a little bit more sense for the business. You always want to make sure that you are in the same time zone. So one thing we actually might need to check our call asset is making sure that you're in the same time zone as that person when you do a very specific, not based on data, but based on their hours, because the hours shown on here are based on your time zone, whereas the hours shown up here on their Google My Business page are shown in their time zone. So we're going to look up time zone for Doraville, Georgia. So they're in Eastern time, so that means we need to move our hours one forward. So instead of 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., we need to be doing it from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. because that will line up with their time zone. So we're actually going to go back in and fix that inside their call asset. And currently I'm in Central Standard Time, so that's why we'll be making that change. And so now that we've done that, the next step we're going to do for their campaign, to not limit it too much, but at the same time still be cutting out those like 2 a.m. phone calls that it's like, are you drunk? Why the hell are you calling an auto shop this late? We are going to go into the ad schedule, and then we're actually going to limit it to, we need to X out all of these. And we're still going to do it all days because we're okay with people calling on Saturday and Sunday. It's just a matter of people calling on like at random times at night when it's like, this is unlikely that somebody is actually interested. They're not actively looking for it. And what we're actually going to do on the Smart campaign is we're going to do it only Monday and Friday, because the Smart campaign also gets directions as a conversion goal. And so people that are trying to get directions, that's a little bit more of like, okay, getting directions, they're trying to go to the shop now. That's not always the case. Obviously, you can be getting directions to see if people are nearby, but it's definitely a good sign that they are trying to actively go to your business at the moment. So this one we're going to do Saturdays and Sundays, and then we can kind of compare the performance, see which ones are having a lower cost per conversion, and if we get feedback from the business that they are getting better conversions, business is picking up, that's also a good sign. So we're going to actually knock out, because we have to move 1 hour forward. We're still going to give like a buffer before their day starts, because some people in the morning can be calling in to try and schedule an appointment. And so we don't want to discount those people. But typically, I mean, we're talking, if people are getting up, there's not many people that are going to be getting up before 5 a.m. That's a reasonable assumption, but to just be careful, we'll do it before 4 a.m. So 4 a.m. their time is 5 a.m. Wait, does that work? No, because we're in Central Standard. I did the math wrong. If it's 4 a.m. there, it's 3 a.m. in Central Standard Time. So we'll do 3 a.m. Oh, sorry. We want to do this all days. 3 a.m. and then a couple hours after they close. So if they close at 6 p.m., that would be 5 p.m. our time. We'll give them like another 3 hours after. Or 3 hours is a bit much. We'll go 2 hours after. So we're talking 2 hours after. That would give them 8 p.m. So that actually gives us 7 p.m. here. I'm not sure how those times overlap. Three a.m. to 7 p.m.? What? Oh, I hadn't saved my... So we have to X all these out. Save them. Whoa, that's weird. Okay, so there was a weird glitch where there was like 48 ones that you had to X out. You just had to keep saving it. But now that we fixed that, now we can see that they're eligible to show all times. Now we're going to come in and actually do the adjustment. It's 7 p.m. And obviously, we need to keep a close eye on the data. If the performance gets a lot worse because of this adjustment, it's easy to go back in and undo it. It's not like this is a permanent change that we're risking the entire campaign on. This is more of a test. If it doesn't work and we get bad feedback from the client, we just undo it. No, just a couple weeks of bad performance is not going to sink an entire campaign. But for the most part, these adjustments tend to work. And so now we're going to go back and we're going to fix what we did with the assets, since we were off by 2 hours by doing it backwards. edit this. So if it's 7 a.m. there, it's actually 6 a.m. here. Perfect. Now that we have that fixed, now the call asset will only show during their business hours. Next thing we're going to check is their keywords. Like we mentioned earlier on the call, we had a keyword like the vehicle inspection that had a poor, it was showing up for a lot of keywords that we don't want it showing up for. And it's kind of reflected in this low quality score. So this might be something worth pausing because we'd rather focus on other keywords because this one's getting us conversions that just don't make sense for the business. What's probably a best thing to do is go to phrase match because it's still something we want to show up for. Because vehicle inspections are something that the auto shop provides. They just don't do emissions testing. Emissions testing is a governmental thing. So we'll change it to phrase match to avoid showing up for like the emissions testing and stuff. If it keeps showing up for the emissions testing, we'll change it to exact match. And then if it just doesn't do anything, we can always pause it. One thing that we typically like to look for in one of these campaigns is our click-through rate. If we've got a low click-through rate on a keyword, we'd rather, and we have a shit ton of keywords. That's not the way you want to run a campaign. Yeah, as you can see here, I mean, just tons that aren't even showing. So what we're going to do is we need the pot. If none of these keywords have shown up in 3 months, they're never showing up. It just means we don't have enough budget to get to them. So we're going to go show rows of 50, and then we're going to go to this backside. We're going to select all of these. We also just marked this thing as phrase match right here, so we need to uncheck this one because it's obvious why it would have 0 impressions because it's never run before, so we don't want to pause it just yet. We're going to go up here to edit. We're going to pause all of these keywords. I mean, we don't want to remove them, but it's a waste of time them being there. It wastes Google's algorithm. It just makes it harder on Google to try to optimize our campaigns. So while that's doing that, we're going to go back to the front page. And we're going to do the same thing with anything that has gotten no clicks and next to no impressions. And so we can probably go by show rows of 30 now. Frankly, you don't want to have any more than 20, 25 keywords. So our goal is going to be to try to get to that at max 25 keywords. So we're going to pause this set. There shouldn't be anything in here nothing in here has over 5 impressions, so totally fine to pause it all. Click edit, click pause. Pause 12 keywords. Now we want to go to only enabled keywords because now that we've paused a lot, we don't want to see anything that hasn't. Ooh, 65. See, that is something that clearly needs to be paused. If it's gotten 65 impressions and no one's clicked on it, it just does not need to happen. So we're going to pause all of these. No clicks. Not necessarily. We'll go back and see if there's other ones we can pause. Obviously, this one needs to be paused. This one can kind of be left alone because they do oil changes. Obviously, they do air filter replacement, but no one's clicking on the ad because the ad probably isn't that relevant to air filter replacement. And so that's another thing that this campaign probably has a problem with is we've got a bunch of ad groups and we've got 3 different ads, but with 93 keywords, your ads just can't be relevant for that many keywords. So that's why you want to be careful about that. So we're going to pause that. Go back to the previous page. I'm going to filter by impressions now. You can see down here, just not much happening. We'll leave air filter replacement in because it's still something we want to try to show up for, and it might start working for us now. No, because we need to get to 25. We need to get to 25 keywords. So we're going to pause these. And then it'll load in some new ones. Let's see. Go ahead and pause these. And we've got 3 more that loaded in. Go ahead and pause these. And while that's going, we're going to look to see if we have anything with a stupid low click-through rate. And when we're talking stupid low, I mean, our average is 7, so we're looking for stuff way below that. So 2, that would be something that's got a click-through rate that's way below that. 3's getting there. 3's pretty close, but we've got a lot with a 3 click-through rate. One thing that you see here is we've got oil change services, broad match, and quick oil change near me. Those are going to show up for basically the same thing because they're both broad match. So we probably want to limit the number of oil change keywords we're showing up for. Like this one does not need to be in place because oil change phrase match, and then we've got oil change services broad match. This one's gonna show up for way more than the phrase match. So no reason for that. Let's see. Quick oil change. We've got oil change services, so we don't need that as well. These are just different ways of phrasing oil change, but broad match takes care of it. You don't need to rephrase a bunch of different things. If you have the main, so if it says oil change in here, you don't need to do anything else. Like if you have oil change, there's no reason to put another keyword that says oil change in it as well. Broad match is going to capture that, unless you're doing like a really long keyword with like 5 different phrases in it. There's no point. Oil change near me. This one seems to be doing the best, so we're actually going to pause this one down here. Especially this one's got a low click-through rate. Oil change near me is doing a little bit better. So we just want to limit it to only showing up for this. So that's a quick way we can knock out some keywords and optimize the campaign. Not to say these probably weren't getting some conversions, even though it didn't look like maybe there was one with a conversion. We've got engine oil change. We don't want to show up for that either. Even though it's technically not doing bad. I mean, it doesn't have any conversions. I mean, you can see right here, no conversions. But we've already got an oil change near me broad match, so we don't need anything else. Auto repair. The only time I recommend putting a keyword, 2 broad match keywords with similar phrases in them is if you're doing one that has a location and the other that doesn't necessarily have a location. Because as you can see here, this one's talking about near me, so that's a location based. This one's auto repair shop. It's kind of more broad. So that's why you can leave both of those in place. And frankly, they're both doing well, so there's no point to take them out. And Atlanta auto repair, we don't want to take that out yet. It's got a good click-through rate, a really good click-through rate. So hopefully that will start to improve now that there's more budget to be focused on it. But if it just said car auto repair, it's like there's no point for that car to be there. So we just would remove that keyword unless it's doing really well. Another quick oil change one. I thought we paused all these. I must have skipped over them. Oil coupon. It's a little different, I guess. Not really sure how that would apply, but we can leave it in. It's not like it's just not doing a lot, but we have some room. Oil for my car. We're going to pause this just because that could be people looking up to purchase oil for themselves. They're not actually looking for oil change. So it's not really a high value keyword for us. I know we have a bunch of tire keywords, so we're going to want to filter out the tire ones that aren't doing too well and find, so tire shop near me. This one's doing pretty well. This one's not doing too bad either. It's got a kind of high cost per conversion, but we can let it sit, see if we get some better performance out of it. One thing that we have here that is a higher cost per conversion for this oil change near me. It may be that we need to create its own ad. So that's something to keep in mind is if you have a keyword that's performing well on pretty much every metric, but like the cost per conversion, like we're getting a ton of impressions, getting a ton of clicks, but it's inside this routine auto maintenance. It's not a ad group specifically for oil change. We might want to make a ad group specifically for oil change, so the ads should being shown for this good keyword are more relevant, so we can boost the click-through rate, maybe decrease the cost per click, and improve the performance of that keyword overall. You can see here we've got a few tire keywords that just we've got a tire shop near me and shop vehicle tires that are this one's actually getting a conversion. Granted, it's a little high, but it's got a better click-through rate than either of these. So we're not worried about that. Okay, we've got auto inspection down here, and then we've got auto inspection right here, broad match. And as we saw, the auto inspection just has not been the keyword for us, and that one frankly has a low click-through rate. So we are going to knock that one out. Let's see. We already removed that. See, these paused ones need to disappear. We'll reload the page once these get paused. No, we don't want to reload it. Okay, now that it's reloaded, you can see we filtered it down to 14 of the top performing keywords. So we want to get rid of this one as well. I'm going to pause that. And another thing to mention, we've got 3 different ad groups and a budget of $10 a day. That's kind of pushing it. That's like the maximum amount of ad groups you'd want with that kind of budget. But we do need to be very specific. So if we see that routine auto maintenance and really the only keywords we're finding in there are transmission fluid, oil change, tire rotation. These are probably instead of having to create another ad group for the oil change to make it perform better, we might just want to filter down our ad headlines to only show things relating to those keywords, because those are the only keywords we're showing. And since we had 93 keywords before, our headlines were probably a little bit all over the place. But now that we've filtered it down to our best performing, this will allow us to make more relevant ads and improve the performance overall. And so, Kate, if you're watching this video, that's for you. Another thing I'm seeing, we've got a best tire shops, and we have a tire shops near me. And we've got buy tires near me, and we've got new tires for sale. Shop vehicle tires. We don't need a best tire shops that has a cost per keyword or cost per click this high when we have $1 cost per click right here. Let's see. What else do we got? Buy tires, 35 cents. Shop vehicle tires. That one's a little high, but it does have a high click-through rate, so we can actually leave it in place based on those factors. There's nothing, because a good click-through rate can make up for a higher cost per click. But that's kind of a judgment call. We've already filtered down a lot of keywords. We're going to allow the campaign to use this newly remodeled campaign and get us more data on these specific keywords to see if it can't improve performance for us. And obviously this is another thing where you can go back and undo these changes if it affects your campaign that deeply, or if some of these keywords don't work out and you want to go back and start up some of the ones that we paused because you want to test some of those out. It's obviously something that you can do. We're getting a little bit long into this audit, so we're going to kind of glance over the adjustments made inside location. One thing I am seeing here is this is probably not lining up super well. These bid adjustments were not done properly based on our bid adjustment spreadsheet, which is been custom designed by Creekside Marketing specifically to automate the calculations for the bid adjustments in order to actually outperform Google's algorithm. And so typically, if you're using our bid adjustment formula, you're not going to get such round numbers because it is so precise. So just looking at this briefly, and you can see plus 50% on the actual average conversion rate, that doesn't really make much sense. So somebody's going to need to come back in. This is another one for Cade. Someone's going to need to come back in and actually do these bid adjustments based on our optimization spreadsheet, but I'm not going to do a whole video on that. You can go watch our specific video on location bid adjustment. I'm going to audiences. This one falls similar in a similar category as the locations. Something I'm seeing here, we don't have a lot of data on the audiences, but what we can get data on is audience segments. And the fact that we don't have audience segments is also something that a little worrisome. So we need to go in and actually get this fixed. So we probably want to add audience segments by campaign. I'm not going to actually, well, this should actually be a really quick thing to do. Scroll through it, briefly looking over it. It typically gives you some good examples of audience segments you can use. We typically can use all of them because we're not actually targeting these. We're just using them as observation. And we can adjust the bids as needed if we get good data on them. So just click save. And this just allows us to start collecting data. It doesn't actually do anything to optimize the campaign yet. This is something you'd want to go back in after 3 or 4 weeks of getting good data and see if there's any specific audience that you want to start targeting better that will improve your performance. One other thing that we can look at, this is probably the last thing that we'll go over on this video, is the where ad showed. And we actually don't have any ads being showed on any display network. So that's actually fine. We typically don't want that with a super low budget, so nothing to worry about here. This is just something you need to worry about if you actually have placements. That was the final thing with the search campaign. We're actually going to look over the Smart campaign really quick. These are typically a lot easier to make adjustments on. And over here we can kind of see the performance of it. And click on the conversion, see what we're tracking as a conversion. That's all good. Those are good conversions to be tracking. Going through here, we're probably going to want to go and look through this pretty in depth. I'm sure there's going to be hundreds of keywords that we need to go through. It's okay to, sometimes we recommend not showing up for other languages, but in this case it should be fine. You just want to make sure you look up what these actually mean if you don't actually speak that language, or you can just guess, but I don't recommend that. That's not something I'm going to spend the entire video going over, but that's definitely something that you can really check, and you can perform kind of the same process that I showed you with the search campaign on the smart campaign. You just can't see as much data on them. I just recommend clicking off keywords that don't make sense for your campaign. One thing we're going to need to do is actually set an ad schedule. Like I said earlier in this video, is we actually want to set it for their business hours, and we're going to compare the performance of this to the performance of the search campaign that we set the hours for a little bit more broadly, and that will kind of give us a baseline case to test this one against. If obviously both of them do well, perfect. We just kind of leave well enough alone, and if one of them does well, one of them does bad, we make adjustments based on that. Another thing I'm seeing here, we might want to put some more negative locations in an area that's broader around this, especially with smart campaigns. Smart campaigns tend to be kind of liberal about showing ads to people kind of close, so you can get a little too far away, because most people aren't going to be driving 45 minutes to go to an auto repair shop. Another thing I'm seeing here is that we've kind of got some overlap. You can see here there's some blue in the red. So we actually might want to be, we want to be a little careful about that. You can see that this overlaps. Yeah, you can see that that part disappeared. There was some red, which is weird. Atlanta, it seems like there's two different parts to it. But that just means we need to go in and find the zip codes and kind of make a circle around our location. So we need to find the specific location of Tilly Mill, and then do a rough circle around it. Go on Google Maps, find the zip codes on those edges, and then fill out kind of a exclusion zone down here, so that way the ads aren't showing out that far. And then once you get that rough ring, you can then do like bigger counties around it, just so Google knows don't show it outside of that ring. But yeah, that is a summary of how to do a optimization campaign for an auto repair center.